Okay, welcome to, I think we're probably on day 5-ish, somewhere right here of equations. Today what we are going to work on is we're going to work on solving equations with variables on both sides. Now, a couple things you have to keep in mind as we're kind of looking at the examples that we're going to look at today, and we're going to look at 5 or 6 of them. Basically, what we're trying to do is get our variable on one side and our constants or our numbers on the other side in order to find one of three things. You could have one solution, so n equals 7. You could have no solutions, or you could have infinitely many solutions, and we're going to look at least 2 types of those inside of the examples for today. And then the third one we'll do on a different day. So our whole goal when we're solving equations, again, is obviously to find the value, in this case, of n. So we have to get our variables on one side and our constants on the other. Now, it doesn't matter if you have your variables on the left-hand side or the right-hand side. What I prefer to do is I prefer to, in a sense, move the smaller of the 2 variables, or the number that's the least, so that I can have a positive variable. So if we look at this first one, I've got negative 2n minus 13 is equal to negative 4n minus 7. Well, negative 4n is the smaller of those 2 numbers. If we look on a number line, if we kind of look on that, if we kind of look at a number line, there's 0, there's negative 2, there's negative 4. Negative 4 is the smaller of those 2. So I'm going to go ahead and move the negative 4n to the other side. Well, how do we do it? Just like we've been doing with moving regular numbers when we're solving equations. I'm going to go ahead and add 4n to both sides of the equation. And notice how I'm writing it right underneath where the other variable is. I'm going to put a line here, and now I'm just going to add down the columns. Negative 2n plus 4n, that gives us 2n. I haven't done anything to the 13, so that's minus 13. Negative 4n plus 4n, well, that gives me 0. So I'm not going to put a 0 there because there's no reason to. And then I'm left with negative 7. Now you'll notice we're kind of where we were when we were doing the first 3 or 4 days of solving equations. Now we've got our variable on the left-hand side. We want to isolate that variable. So we're going to go ahead and add 13 to both sides. Draw our little line there. That gives us 2n is equal to negative 7 plus 13. If you have to get out your calculator, take the absolute values of those bigger one minus the smaller one, and you end up with this being 6. We still have to solve for n, so we're going to divide by 2. That leaves us with n is equal to 3. So that's our one solution then that we are going to have for this problem with n is equal to 3. But again, it's all about getting the variables on one side. And could I have added 2n to both sides? Certainly could have. We'd get the same result. Just I prefer to deal with positives, so that way it's just kind of one less step that I have a chance of kind of messing up with, so to say. So let's look at the second one. The second example, 11 minus 6p is equal to 1 minus 4p. So I like to deal with my variables first. So my variables are negative 6p and negative 4p. If I look at them on the number line, there's 0, there's negative 4, there's negative 6. Negative 6 is smaller, so the negative 6 is the one I'm going to move. So I'm going to go ahead and add 6p to both sides. I'm going to line them up right underneath each other. Draw my line. Bring down the 11. Minus 6p plus 6p, that gives me 0. I'm not going to put anything. Equals, kind of far away there, but that's okay. Drop down the 1. Negative 4 plus 6, that gives me a positive 2, so I've got a positive 2p. So I've got 11 is equal to, and I'm just going to rewrite it so it's a little bit closer. 11 is equal to 1 plus 2p. Okay, now we got to isolate our variable. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 1 from both sides. 11 minus 1 is 10. 10 is equal to 2p. 2 times what is 10? Easy enough to say p is equal to 5. 2 times 5 is 10. That's my solution. Remember, how do you get rid of multiplying? You divide. 10 divided by 5. 10 divided by 2 is 5 as well. And there's your solution. Next one. Okay, now on the next one, a few more operations to talk about when we do this one. So we've got negative 16 plus x minus 5x equals 6x minus 2x. So this time, I'm kind of looking at it going, okay, I'm just going to put a little line here this time, just kind of help me out just a little bit. And you notice on the left-hand side of that, I've got two like terms. I've got x and negative 5x. Remember, on that side, we only want to have at most two terms. We've got three terms, so I can combine those. So if I combine x and negative 5x, that gives me negative 4x. So that's 16 minus 4x, and I'm going to erase this line now here. That's going to equal, well, if I look at this, that's 6x minus 2x, so I can combine those as well. And that's 4x. So I've got negative 16 minus 4x equals 4x. So again, I want to move the smaller of the two numbers of my variables. So if I identify my variables, it's here and here. Negative 4x is furthest to the left, so I'm going to go ahead and add 4x to both sides. So that's negative 16 is equal to 4 plus 4 is 8, so that's 8x. 8 times what is negative 16? Well, it's going to be negative 2. Kind of mathematically divide both sides by 8. That gives us negative 2 is equal to x. And there's your solution. The next one. So we've got 12 minus a is equal to 4 minus a plus 6. So I'm looking at it going, okay, I've got two terms on the left side of the equal sign and three terms on the right. So I'm going to have to combine terms. So 4 and 6 are like terms. So I'm just going to rewrite the left-hand side. 4 plus 6 is 10. And then we got 10 minus a. Well, now I'm looking at it and I'm going, okay, I want to move the lesser of the two, but they're the same. So I'm just going to go ahead and put plus a on both sides. When I do that, I'm left with 12 is equal to 10. Notice how my variables are gone. But when I look at this, this is a false statement. If this is a false statement, 12 certainly doesn't equal 10. If this is false, there is no solution to this. Anytime you get a false result, that means there's no solution. So there's no value that I could put in there for a that is ever going to work for this problem. Anytime that's false, that's what that's going to be. The next one. Next one, we've got negative 6 minus 5, and then a parentheses, b plus 4 is equal to negative 34 minus 3b. Okay, so I'm just going to take a couple seconds to kind of think about what I need to do here. And notice I probably need to use the distributive property first. And then it looks like I'll have 3 terms, so then I'm going to have to simplify that a little bit to get it to 2 terms equals to 2 terms, and then I can move some things around. So let's start with the distributive property. I'm going to bring down the negative 6. Remember, the distributive property says that we're going to take this times this. Negative 5 times b is negative 5b. It also means I'm going to take negative 5 times 4, which is negative 20. Make sure you distribute the negative in there as well. Then that's going to equal negative 34 minus 3b. We've got 3 terms on that left-hand side, so we're going to highlight the like terms. So we've got 6 Negative 6 minus 20, that's negative 26 minus 5b. That 6 looks an awful lot like a b. See if we can fix that a little bit. I'm going to rewrite this negative 26. It's probably not much better, but oh well. Equals negative 34 minus 3b. So I'm going to look at my two variables and think about which one is furthest to the left on the number line. Negative 5 is further to the left, so I'm going to go the opposite of it. So I'm going to add 5b, lining them up. Add down the columns, so I'm just going to shift this over and try to write my 6 a little bit better this time. 26 is equal to negative 34. Negative 3 plus 5b, I think that's positive 2b. So I've got a positive variable in there, and that's what I always kind of like to have. I'm going to move the numbers now. So I'm going to go ahead and add 34. Negative 26 plus 34, I believe that's 8. Only thing left over there is 2b. 2 times what is 8? B is equal to 4. Or again, divide by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. And there's your solution. It's a little bit more complex of a problem there, using some of the properties that we talked about last week, and then including them with what we've been doing today. So the last one. So if you want to pause the video here for a second and just kind of try this one by yourself, go ahead and pause the video, and when you're ready to go ahead and hit play. As I'm just going to kind of keep going here. So we've got 3 times a plus 7 is equal to 6a plus 39. Distributive property probably is going to have to happen. So we go 3 times a is 3a. 3 times 7 is 21. That's going to equal 6a plus 39. Okay, so now I'm going to change it up a little bit on this one, and I'm going to mess up. I'm going to say, okay, well, 6 is smaller than 3, which, again, I know isn't true, but watch what happens if I do it this way. So I'm going to subtract 6a this time instead, and it's okay to do that. You'll notice now I have negative 3a plus 21 is equal to 39. Now I've got a negative, but that's okay. I'm just going to have to remember at the end that I have to divide by a negative. I'm going to subtract 21. That gives me negative 3a is equal to negative 39 minus 21 is 18. Now I have to make sure that I divide by negative 3, and a is equal to negative 6. And that is your solution for that one. Okay? So the big thing today, you're solving equations with variables on both sides. In order to do that, make sure that you use the rules that we talked about last week. 2 on the left-hand side, 2 on the right-hand side, or 1 and 2, or whatever, no more than 2. Move the variable. I always like to move the variable first. I always like to use the variable that's furthest to the left, so then that I have a positive variable. Doesn't matter if you do, like we see in this last example. Once you do that, then you can just solve the equations like we did last week. That does it for today. Your assignment's sitting there somewhere, probably inside of Schoology. Good luck with finishing that up, and we will talk at you tomorrow.